Welcome to this meditation on Moses. The God of the Bible is an active God. He doesn't just sit there in heaven enjoying himself. He works hard to liberate his people, and we see this in the story of Moses. We might reflect a little on what a miracle is in the Bible. A miracle is a sign which points to God. It doesn't prove anything, and it doesn't force anyone to believe if they don't want to. And so the miracles by which God saved the Hebrews justified their faith in God. Moses had predicted the miracles, and their own land of Goshen was spared these terrible afflictions, the 10 plagues, and that justified their faith in God. The Egyptians were afraid that the Hebrews were greatly multiplying, and so the Pharaoh, their king, ruled that all the Hebrew male children should be thrown into the river Nile. The mother of Moses floated her little son in a basket on the river, and it was found by the Pharaoh's daughter. She adopted him as her son. We might be shocked by the cruelty of the Egyptians, but really, are our modern birth control and abortion policies less cruel? Do we take them for granted? Have we accepted them? Moses grew up in the Pharaoh's palace, but he remembered that he was a Hebrew. The Hebrews were being treated with terrible cruelty by the Egyptians and cried out to God to save them. Moses saw an Egyptian attacking a Hebrew, and he killed the Egyptian. In fear, he fled Egypt and lived out in the desert for many years. One day he was shepherding his sheep and goats and saw a strange sight. A bush was burning, but was not being consumed by the flames. He went closer to investigate, and the voice of God told him he was on holy ground. God had heard the cry of the Hebrews and wished to save them. He told Moses that he was to go to the Pharaoh and demand that he allow the Hebrews to leave Egypt. Moses was terrified by this and begged to be excused, but the Lord insisted, promising to be with him. Surely we too are often terrified by what we think God is asking us. We need to learn from the story of Moses. God will be with us if we do his will. Moses and Aaron went into the Pharaoh and demanded freedom for the Hebrews. They were dismissed, of course, and Moses threatened that God would bring terrible plagues upon the Egyptians. These 10 plagues can be regarded as natural phenomena, which is perhaps why the Pharaoh refused to be convinced by them. They only become miraculous when seen through the eyes of faith. The Nile River turned red, and the whole country was invaded by frogs. There were frogs everywhere. Plague followed upon plague, mosquitoes, flies, cattle plague. All living creatures became afflicted with terrible boils, and there was a great hailstorm. Only the land of Goshen, where the Hebrews lived, was spared these terrible afflictions. Moses went into the Pharaoh again, demanding that he let the Hebrews go into the wilderness to worship God. He threatened that if the Pharaoh refused again, then a great plague of locusts would come upon the land and consume everything. Pharaoh agreed, but then reneged. How often we promise God something and then refuse to do it. Thank God he doesn't send a terrible plague upon us, which we might often deserve. The last plague was truly terrible. The Lord instructed the Hebrews to prepare for departure. They were to kill a lamb for a special meal and paint the doorposts of their houses with its blood. That night the destroyer would kill all the firstborn of the Egyptians, man and beast. But the Lord would not allow him to enter the houses of the Hebrews with blood painted on the doorposts. There was terrible sorrow in Egypt, and the Pharaoh called Moses and ordered him and his people to leave the country at once. The Hebrews left and quickly came perhaps to the shallow sea of reeds. The Egyptians realized that they had lost all their slaves and set off in pursuit. A strong wind blew the water back, and the Hebrews could cross over. When the Egyptians arrived in their chariots, they tried to follow but became bogged in the sand. The water then returned and they were drowned. Later editions add extraordinary details to the story, of Moses striking the water with his rod, and of the water standing up on either side in great walls. It need not have been as extraordinary as that, but the Hebrews certainly saw through the eyes of faith that God had intervened to save them. Once out in the desert, the Hebrews began to die of thirst. They complained bitterly to Moses and asked whether he had brought them out into the desert to die. The Lord told Moses to strike a rock with his rod to get water. Nothing happened at first, so Moses struck again. Then water gushed out in great quantities. Because of this defect in faith, Moses did not enter the promised land. The Lord asks us to have total, unquestioning faith in his word, without a shadow of doubt. Perhaps we need to reflect a little on our own faith. How alive is it? The Hebrews had no food out in the desert, and so God caused a strange kind of bread to appear. It has been suggested that perhaps this was a kind of honeydew found on the tamarisk tree. When they complained about that food, flocks of quail began to fly in, so that they had variety in their diet. The Hebrews were constantly complaining after God had released them from slavery, and this irked God very much. Perhaps we too complain too much. We should try to see all of life, the good and the bad, coming to us from the hand of God, and be grateful for it all. Everything is his gift, given with love. They came near to Mount Sinai, and God called Moses to climb the mountain and meet him. There Moses received the 10 Commandments carved on tablets of stone. He was there on the mountain for 40 days. The Hebrews had grown impatient of Moses and of God, and decided to make a golden calf and worship it, saying, "This is the God who brought you out of Egypt." Sadly, this sort of thing is very common. Many people are prepared to love and value a new car more than they love and value God. As he came down the mountain, Moses saw the people worshipping their golden calf and indulging in a general orgy. He threw the tablets down, smashing them, ground up the golden calf to powder, and mixed it with water and forced the people to drink it. As a punishment for their continual complaining and infidelity, the Hebrews wandered in the desert for 40 years. Many left their bones in the desert and never saw the promised land. Because of his slight defect in faith, Moses too did not enter the promised land. Sitting on a high mountain, he saw the beautiful land in the distance, and then, full of years, was joined to his fathers.